Good morning. Today our speaker attended Fleming County High School and Morehead State University, where she received a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in elementary education. She has also received her national board certification in reading and early childhood literature. She is married to Ricky Story and has two sons, Casey and Corey Story. She is the daughter of Charles and Frances Cannon, and she teaches kindergarten at Nicholas County Schools. I broke her in as a teacher. I used to let her substitute for me, and that was in front of a band with instruments, and they would switch instruments on her, and she'd have to put up with them till the end of the day. But anyway, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you an excellent educator and my niece, Joy Story.
Isn't life funny? Here we are, little old me in front of all of you. I would never have imagined this scenario in my wildest imagination. But you see, God has been challenging me these past few years. He knows that I love to stay in my box, slide in the back row pew each Sunday and not make any waves. And then I was asked to serve as elder, and he was nudging me out of my box. What you may not know is that each Sunday when it was my turn to serve, I would be so nervous that my hands would just literally shake. I would almost feel physically ill, kind of like right now. And some Sundays, my thoughts would just float right out of my head, something like Prissy and Gone with the Wind. But then this June, my 3-year term was over, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I'd made it without messing up too bad on any given Sunday. And for the next year, I could stay in my box, slide in the back row pew, and stay under the radar just the way I like it. And then Joy Gooding calls. Here God was, prodding me again to come out of my box. Well, I struggle with the idea of what I would actually have to talk to you about today with any confidence. But then after a few days, an idea began to form, so I called Joy back and accepted the challenge of being this year's Women's Day speaker. I guess God knows me better than I know myself, and if he believes I have something to say to you all today, then I need to be up to the challenge. But what topic could I speak on with confidence and passion? As Mary Jane said, I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I'm currently in my 22nd year teaching kindergarten. I know I can speak with confidence and passion about kids. During my 22 years, I have been blessed to meet many wonderful children, each with their own story and way that their lives have enriched and blessed mine. Today, I'm going to mention just a few of my students that have left a lasting impression on me. I hope something I say today adds a blessing to your life. God has blessed me with a career that is challenging, rewarding, and always unpredictable. So, here is my David Letterman style top 5 things I've learned in kindergarten. Is it not loud enough? It's not working, so we're going to have to use this. Did they miss the whole introduction?
Yes.
I'll have to start over there. Well, I'm doing a top 5 things that I've learned in kindergarten. So can you hear me now? All right. Okay, coming in at number 5. Kids say and do the darndest things. My friend and I have said many times that we need to write a book. You never know what a kid will say or do, and after 22 years, I have a lot of instances to choose from. Each year, we start with the incoming kindergarten students checking for readiness for kindergarten. We ask some questions like their name, their address, letter recognition, color, and shape recognition. And when one of the little boys who was dressed like a farmer with his boots and shorts on, and he had a little swagger like a good old country boy, was asked to identify the 8 basic colors, he said with confidence when the color green was held up, John Deere, red, Farmall, and blue, Ford. Also, each year as part of the curriculum, we teach the 4 seasons of the year. Now, we've been studying the seasons all week long, so we talked about them, we sang about them, we read books about them, we did activities about the 4 seasons. So this was Friday. So I asked the class if they could raise their hand if they could name the 4 seasons of the year. And when this one little boy raised his hand, I knew he had it. He always has the answer right. So I called on him, and I said, name the 4 seasons of the year. And he said, deer season, turkey season, fishing season, dove season. Where had he been all week long? I don't know. So one of the most memorable kids do the darndest things happened during a home visit to meet one of my incoming kindergartners. My coworker and I go to the door, and the mom lets us in. And we begin to talking to the mom and the other kids that were in the home. Mom says that my new student is actually in the backyard looking in the dog cage that the possum had gotten into the night before. Well, during this discussion, we heard a gunshot. Now, this wasn't a gunshot far away. It was like right here on the other side of the wall. Mom never blinked, kept right on talking like that was nothing unusual. And I looked at my coworker, and she looked at me, and both were thinking, what kind of situation have we gotten ourselves into? Well, a few minutes later, Grandma and my new student walked through the door, Grandma with a pistol in her hand, and the little boy proudly telling everyone, I got that possum with 1 shot. Well, you can imagine we couldn't wait to get out of that house. And as a side note, that kid gave me a run for my money all year long. But wouldn't it be wonderful to possess the innocence of a child? They only speak from what they know. As adults, we are conditioned by our upbringing, culture, and life experiences. We become jaded and hardened by this world we live in. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be free of those conditioned mindsets so we could look at every situation through the eyes of faith and innocence? Coming in at number 4 is we all just want to fit in. Don't we all just want people to accept us and make us feel like we fit in? Imagine being a 5-year-old who knows on some level that she is different than the other girls in her class. This little girl's story was that her mom worked the night shift. She left before the kids went to bed and arrived home after they left for school. Dad was in charge. So Dad had this bright idea that he would put her to bed in the clothes that she was going to wear on the next day to school, and all he'd have to do was pop her up out of bed and put her on the bus the next morning. Only a man could think this up, right, girls? This was a great plan for Dad, but there was one major problem for his daughter. She had the prettiest, long, naturally curly hair that the time we would see her walk in the door each morning, she would look like something out of the video Thriller. I mean, her hair was in every direction, wrinkled clothes, because he typically would put sweatpants on her. And my heart went out to her because sitting all around her were girls and dresses and pretty bows, and she would say things like, I like so-and-so's hair, or I like so-and-so's dress. And I knew this child's self-esteem and sense of belonging was being challenged. She wanted to fit in and be like the other girls in the class. So each morning, my friend and coworker took her in the bathroom, brushed her hair, let her choose a bow for the day and the way she wanted her hair styled. The transformation, both physically and emotionally, was unbelievable. And so, each morning that school year, that was our routine. I think about this little girl often now that she's in her teenager, and because she just wanted to fit in. You know, we all get a feeling of security from fitting in. The satisfaction of being accepted by others is universal to all of us. But I hope that we can strive to show others how being a Christian has changed us from the inside out, and instead of fitting in, we find a way to shine God's light through our standing out in the crowd. Coming in at number 3, in the words of Dr. Phil, every situation needs a hero. The school district I work in is very small, and a few years back, we had a family of 5 kids all under the age of 8 that were in our school system. A 2nd grader, a kindergartner in my room, 2 preschoolers, and a baby. We all had concerns about this family, and over several years, their home life deteriorated until social services removed all 5 kids from the home. Now, this is something that very rarely rises to that level in our small community, and if it does, there's family members that can step in, but that wasn't the case for this family. And all the teachers and administrators were very upset and felt powerless. None of us had our foster parent training, so we couldn't legally help them at the initial removal. We felt like our hands were tied. These kids needed us, and we were racking our brains on how to help. Several school employees put their heads together and went to the local county attorney and asked for temporary custody of the kids. Well, this was granted, and the 2 oldest kids had been placed in a foster home in northern Kentucky. The day the courts granted temporary custody, 2 of the ladies left school early and traveled to northern Kentucky to pick up the 2 oldest girls. Well, the ladies said when they pulled up, both girls were out in the front yard playing, and they ran to the car, and the first thing out of the oldest girl's mouth was, "What took you so long?" Those girls knew that we cared and had been waiting for someone to rescue them. Well, the 2 older girls were placed with one school employee. The 2 middle girls lived with another school employee, and the little baby was placed in the home of yet another school employee. Every situation needs a hero. These ladies had families and children of their own, and with no hesitation disrupted their families on so many levels to make a difference in the lives of these children. They are heroes. Now fast forward a couple of years. All 5 kids are thriving emotionally, physically, and academically. The 2 oldest are officially adopted. The 2 middle girls' adoption was actually finalized just a couple of weeks ago, and the little boy is on track to be adopted soon. In Ephesians 2:10 tells us, God has created us for a life of good deeds, which he has already prepared for us to do. These good deeds are our service to the world. Whenever we serve others in any way, we are actually serving God and fulfilling one of our purposes. Okay, coming in at number 2. Christians, we have work to do. Now, this story happened just this year in a classroom down the hall. Do any of you know who Johnny Chapman is? Well, he's a very important character in kindergarten. Johnny Chapman, better known as Johnny Appleseed, planted apple trees all over the East. And during our life cycle unit, we make a big deal about his life, and we describe his story to the children. So when this teacher was describing Johnny, she talked about his pot on his head, his bag and stick, and his bare feet, and his Bible in his hand that he carried wherever he went. And one little boy from the back of the room said, "What's a Bible?" Well, I see this firsthand every year. So many kids don't know Jesus because the grown-ups raising them do not see the importance or want to make the effort to raise them in church. But I believe that as a congregation, we need to do our part to keep our kids coming to church as they develop their faith through their teens and young adulthood. And when I say our kids, I mean that each and every one of us sitting here is responsible for making our kids feel loved and welcomed at church. Our kids may not remember what we say to them, but they will remember how we make them feel and associate us with church and God's love. Don't each one of you have an adult who made a difference on how you felt coming to church? So I challenge each one of you to make an effort to say hello to as many kids as you can each Sunday morning. Ask how they're doing. Tell them you're glad to see them at church. If you see them in the community, make an effort to speak to them. If you see they've accomplished something in sports or at school, send them a note. But pray for our youth. We need to keep our kids in church. But remember the little boy that didn't know what a Bible was? Well, all is not lost, because the little girl sitting next to him quickly informed him it's a book about Jesus and how he came to earth to save us. Every year, especially around Christmas and Easter, I listen into conversations our kids are having about what they've learned about Jesus at church. And the other kids are very curious. That you can tell that they know on some level that they are hearing something important. So I propose to you today that as a congregation, let us do the work to keep our kids in church so that when the little boy in the room asks, "What's a Bible?" our kids will reply with confidence and love, "It's a story of Jesus." So I've made it. We have arrived at the number one thing I've learned in kindergarten. Everybody has a story. Each of us have our experiences that have formed and shaped who we are today. This story begins with an activity that I do each year with each student called the Me Bag. For the first month of school, as a getting to know you activity, each student takes home a bag with instructions to fill it with 5 things about them that they want their new friends to know. This particular little boy stood in front of the class with the Me Bag in hand. Now, the routine is for them to take one item out at a time and explain the meaning of each item. He began by pulling out your usual items, a toy tractor because he wants us to know his dad's a farmer and he likes to farm, a picture of his family, a favorite stuffed animal, a souvenir from a family vacation, and the last item he pulled out of the bag was a picture. And when I looked at it, my heart sank. I showed the picture to the class and said, "What do you want us to know about you from this picture?" And this sweet, innocent 5-year-old little boy stood in front of his class of peers and said, "I want everyone to know that I'm a cancer survivor, and this is me crossing the finish line at a Relay for Life race." Powerful. Everyone has a story. Well, fast forward a few months later, and the cutest little petite brown-haired, brown-eyed little girl moved into town and joined my class. I gave her the me bag with instructions. So the following day, she stood in front of the class and pulled out each item one at a time: a favorite baby doll, a picture of her family, a toy dog to talk about her pet. And that last item she pulled out, I just looked at it and was totally stumped. The item was in a Ziploc bag, and it looked like a tube with some kind of apparatus attached. I had no clue. So I said, "What do you want us to know about you from this item?" And this cute little 5-year-old little girl said, "I want everyone to know that I had cancer, and this is my Charlie, and it was inside of me when I had cancer." I was speechless. But remember my student from the beginning of the year? From the back of the room, I heard, "I know what that is. I have one too." Well, in a conversation with his mother, she told me that this tube is actually inserted into a child through surgery when they're going through cancer treatments. And it exits the child around the chest area, and it forms a Y into 2 tubes for drawing blood and giving medicine. Some kids become very attached to their Charlie. Everyone has a story. We don't really know their story unless we've walked in their shoes. As Christians, we should always give people the benefit of the doubt because we have no idea what their stories are. Jesus used stories as a powerful tool for teaching and reaching our hearts and souls. The Bible invites us in to see God's story as our own. It becomes a book that doesn't describe the actions and beliefs of people in history. Instead, it describes the actions and beliefs of us today. Stories of faith and how God meets us in life can be contagious and spread to others as a way of seeing God at work in their own lives. My top 5 things I learned in kindergarten list highlights just a few ways that God has touched me these last 22 years in my profession. I hope these stories made you stop and see God at work in your own story. God bless each one of you. Amen.